When we were kids, my best friend and I were wells of creativity. We didn't even get it. We weren't trying to be artists or content creators back then, we were just having fun. Andy kept making up stories. I'd illustrate the characters and make comics out of some of them. Actually, I drew and painted a lot all of my life, easily and without much thought. That was when it worked the best. It would always become harder when some expectation was put upon me, like draw something for your aunt's birthday. Too deliberate. Thinking always blocked me. The same went for Andy. His stories were the best when done spontaneously. Back when we didn't think about how we needed to be creative or productive, or that anything we did had any value, or that we had a talent, or needed to achieve anything with it. We just did it, and people around us would respond. Then came university, then work. Andy got a wife and a kid. Slowly and without any drama, we drifted apart. I didn't draw in a long time. It's hard when you work 5 days a week. You're tired in the evening and recovering during the weekend. Suddenly, the idea of myself as an artist started to matter more and more, and with it became less and less obtainable. It started to matter because I needed something to hold on to what would represent a side of me outside of this absurd routine I was now stuck in. And I didn't have my own family. I was free after work, not that I managed to do much with it aside from finishing a lot of shows, games, movies, and books, and drinking a bit too much. By then, it's been years since I saw Andy, but at one point we ran into each other, promised we'd grab a beer, surprisingly lived up to the promise, and realized that, despite all this time, we were still friends. We started hanging out more often. We didn't even live that far. His wife just had their second kid, and the whole thing seemed overwhelming to me. But it seemed he was managing just fine. One time I asked him if he was still writing anything. In retrospect, I could recognize that he had a serious gift. Endless ideas, unique style, even as a kid. Hell, he even studied literature, although he was in finance now. Sometimes, he said, I don't have that much time, and I often start on some stories only to realize they're dumb and give up. He told me his dream is still to write a book, but finding the motivation to write is difficult as is, and finding the right moment and atmosphere even more so. But 10 years ago, he wrote a short story/novel still in the draft stage. I managed to convince him to let me read it, and I was amazed. The story was short, but it was so good and imaginative. The ending felt a bit rushed, and some plot elements could be fine-tuned, but the writing itself was genius. I could feel the characters, the atmosphere around them, the original ideas and believable dialogues. I told him honestly, with a not insignificant effort to repress my jealousy, that he needed to keep on writing. He laughed and asked me, what about my drawing? I showed him a few things I made throughout the years, and he appeared genuinely impressed, except there was little to show. He asked me about one of the more recent drawings, which turned out pretty cool. I told him I actually made it in about half an hour, in a pissed-off mood after losing my job. Most of it was like that. The flash of inspiration is something I can't summon or plan. I envy the people who can get anywhere through pure discipline, I said. For me, it's all completely outside of my control. This resonated with Andy. When I wrote my story, at the moment, the most complete work in my life, my mother died. This was the worst year of my life. I didn't care about anything. The only thing I could do was write. Yeah, I agreed. It seems to me that the best works I've made came from the moments where I had the least desire to live. I've been thinking about this for a long time, he confessed. I've been trying so hard to get that drive back. I tried to write drunk, I tried to write sober, I tried to write when I'm on leave, I tried to write after my leave, I tried to write after work, I tried to write on weekends, I tried to write during work because it's more peaceful than at home. During big, live events, or tried to wait for things to get more peaceful, break the routine, write desperately, write calmly, force it, not force it. In the end, nothing works, except maybe a tragedy. He laughed. At least you have an excuse. You have a wife, 2 kids, a demanding job. I'm just lazy. I tried to cheer him up. I didn't envy his lifestyle, but it was a good life, the life he wanted. I know this sounds awful, but to have children, a family, that's nice and I love them, but I can't say it's that fulfilling, or that it's the meaning of life for me. Ultimately, they're here to have their own lives, and I'm still me, and I wonder what I really accomplished. Creating someone else to take a shot at making something interesting? No, kids aren't what I want to leave as my mark on this world, and now I feel that this is it, that there's no more that infinitely long future filled with possibilities in front of us. We were both in some kind of desperation, an identity crisis. We were both in some kind of depression, an identity crisis. In my 20s, I was so lost and wanted some stability, and now I was choked by the regularness of life. Maybe it was the awareness that things could continue like this, every day the same, and then you die. That seemed terrifying at times, especially at night, with the next day gaping in front of me like a black hole, waiting for me to fall in. Some people have a strong feeling of purpose from which nothing can pull them away. I have some talent, but I find it so monumentally hard to give it any dedication. After that day, this became our regular topic we always seemed to come back to. Is it better to try to force yourself to do something, or wait for the inspiration to hit you? But what when it's simply not happening? We'd occasionally read some self-help advice, although we were always a bad audience for this kind of thing, constantly trying to identify what it was that was blocking us. We'd share our observations. Andy would come up with some cool ideas for stories, but it wouldn't go anywhere. I'd try to sketch or do something crazy, and it would just come off as forced and fake. Slowly, Andy started working on a theory that, with time, became more and more concrete and ritualistic. He started from that simple and not too original observation that he can only create when going through a loss. The suffering artist, or something. He started to believe that there is some balance in life, that he was trying to maintain too many things, and that some kind of hole was needed that could be filled with creation. We'd had some beers when he was going on about it again. See, I always avoided big responsibilities, taking serious relationships, a family. I always stingy about my time and how much I could give to others, and yet I have the same problem. He waved me off, drunker than I was. We all have different capacities. Although I have more obligations, you are equally balanced by yours, as small as you think they seem in comparison. And even that's the wrong way of looking at it. I'm not talking about free time or energy because I realized that's not the issue, just an excuse. I'm talking on a much more metaphysic level. Metaphysic. I remember that. I found it hilarious at the time. But he kept on with this idea of equilibrium, balancing the things you want in life, with an increasingly elaborate approach to the topic. From a general idea that comes down to that all aspects of your life can't be at their highest at the same time.